Welcome, everyone, to the Paranormal Misfit podcast, where I deep dive into the realms of horror, paranormal mysteries, conspiracies, and the dark underbelly of history. I am your host, Chrissy, your guide into the shadows and secrets that lurk in the night. Join me as I explore the unknown, uncover the unexplained, and unravel the mysteries that defy logic and reason. Get ready to be intrigued, creeped out, and captivated by the stories that will send chills down your spines. So dim the lights, grab your headphones, and prepare for a journey into the realms of horror, paranormal, conspiracies, cults, dark history, cryptids, and secret societies. This is the Paranormal Misfit podcast, and I am Chrissy, your host and storyteller.
Welcome to the Dead Podcast. I'm your host, Desi, and on this podcast, I discuss all things spooky and weird, from ghosts, demons, religion, to folklore, urban legends, true crime, and all things paranormal, with some horror movie reviews sprinkled in. So join me on this spooky ride.
I have widescreen so I can see everybody. Okay, cool. All right, so hello, everyone. Tonight's episode is a doozy, and it's going to be fun because we have not just one set of guests, we have two sets of guests, and I'm very excited because I have been working with Belle for like a few months now, trying to like figure out how to get them on here.
We've been trying.
So we have the Paranormal Lovers. If you have listened to them on Spotify or Apple Playlist, they're here, and I'm so excited because they did quite a few episodes on aliens, extraterrestrials, alien abductions, and what a perfect way for them to help me co-host than to greet and interview Leslie and Stephen Shaw, who have actually written a book on aliens and their theories. So if you could, Leslie and Stephen, go over yourselves and then your book a little bit.
Sure. Our book's called Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. And we are both UFO witnesses, and Stephen's family have been victims of the abduction phenomenon. And that's where our, we both have this lifelong love affair with the subject because of that. And I'm a journalist, and I'm the writer in the family, so I did the most of the work of writing and typing it out and stuff. But Stephen has a much more scientific background, and I needed his help constantly with research, and he wrote his own family history into the book as well. So that's why we're co-authors and a team for sure. Stephen, you tell them about yourself a little bit.
Yes, I've around about the age of 30, I decided I really wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on with the 3 generations of weirdness that had been happening in my family bloodline. So anyway, it goes back to about the age of 3. When I was the age of 3, I was commonly visited by this invisible entity that would jump on my chest and my stomach in the middle of the night, kind of playfully, kind of like a cat would do, but it wasn't a cat. So, but also too, I was taught from a very young age that we had this family spirit guide called Oglegli that was kind of a protector of the family, but also would visit and help people out, or show up at certain times, important times. So I grew up in kind of a strange house from the standpoint. I grew up in Woodland Hills, California, and my parents both grew up in wartime England as children. So, they grew up as no nonsense people, but I knew about my mom doing automatic writing and such like that. So
they're a psychic bunch. The whole family are very psychic.
Yes. So anyway, by the age of 10, I heard this strange noise again in the middle of the night, and I was sleeping in a bunk bed on the top of the bunk bed. My brother, being 6 years younger, was on the bottom of the bunk bed, and I got out of the bunk bed, and I knew it wasn't the dog that we had, but I was actually, something in my gut told me that this is something weird. So I walked down the hallway, and my heart was pounding, and my breathing was elevated, and I was actually kind of scared about what I was going to see. And just as I was going to turn the corner into the living room, my mind just goes blank. Okay. Next thing I know, a few minutes later, I end up back in my bed. Okay. So that was very, very strange.
This is a common thing with the family where they would see something bizarre and they'd actually be frightened by it, and then suddenly they go black. That's not when you roll over and go back to sleep when you're terrified, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it kept happening.
My brother also, he spent 2 years of his life from the age of about 6 to 8 sleeping in the closet in our room. And I asked folks, why are you sleeping in the closet? Well, I'm afraid of the little men that come in the middle of the night. And I kind of understood him because I had a vague memory of seeing the same thing when I was about his age. They look like almost like garden gnomes, but shimmery, maybe about a foot tall. There'd be 4 or 5 of them, and they would be walking into the room. My brother, he was actually really frightened by these. So, but again, I took this just with a grain of salt. My parents, it was just something that we just knew in the family, and it's something that you do not tell your friends at school. They think either you're living in a haunted house, or they think that you're lying, or they think that you're half nuts. Okay, so this is something we kept between our family, but we knew because people had seen this spirit guide called Oglegli, which I thought was basically, I didn't think of it as being an alien at the time, but as it turns out with our research, Oglegli really is.
We think Philip one time saw
Is a
a gray
protector.
alien in his room before blacking out.
In 1982.
And this is the first time a family member actually saw clearly what was going on, what was happening
When
with
he
them.
was 16 years of age.
And this shimmery thing Steve talks about, a lot of the family has, when their memories are tampered with, they seem to see everything shimmery. I think it's a sign of memory tampering, and that they do to their abductees.
And my brother saw this. It was like three nights in a row that weirdness happened to him. This is the house that my father and I and my brother are all building 350 miles away in the woods in Sonora, California. So it wasn't like there was like a haunting happening in one house. In fact, these things have basically followed me.
They follow the family all
follow
over,
me
yeah.
to 6 different houses. And the original stuff that I know about my great grandparents came from Germany. They were the Newmans, and they were practicing automatic writing and spiritualism. And then my mom was born in England, and she learned that stuff from her mother. And then they moved over in 1956 to California. But this phenomenon for me has followed me to at least 6 different houses so far.
Yeah. Did you have any questions, you guys?
Do you guys have any?
Lots, maybe.
I don't think we do quite yet. I do find it fascinating, though, that a lot of the specifics about your experiences, they really do align with a lot of the other accounts that we've heard, especially with the last two that we did with I like to call it the Tale of Two Bettys. We did the Hills and Betty Andreasen. And a lot of their things kind of lined up as well. And it's very fascinating to hear that there's a lot of things that are common across all accounts of abductions.
We recently heard that Betty's sister and her niece, Betty's sister's daughter, were also abductees. And that aligns with our research, where it's frequently it's in families, the whole family.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we first started researching it, I thought, oh, it's probably just the alien. Like the theories were that it was just the aliens are curious about us. They just want some samples. No big deal. It's just scientific curiosity.
Yeah, research and development. Yeah.
But that they would take a cross section of humanity, but that is not what we found is happening. It's they find a particular strain of DNA that they like, that meets their criteria for.
It's targeted.
And then they'll take that person again and again and again and again and again through their lives, and then they'll start taking their kids and their grandkids. So it spreads into the family conically, on a chart.
Yeah.
it just grows exponentially outward as the family grows in size. And they seem to be targeting. It's mostly Caucasians.
Primarily.
But we're looking at data in the U.S. That we've heard that recently that it's possibly not as high a Caucasian phenomenon as we thought. But in the U.S., it's like a 94% of abductees are Caucasian, and frequently green-eyed. Green eyes are kind of rare. It's a
recessive trait,
a recessive mutation in human beings, but it makes up a disproportionately large number of abductees.
Oh,
and they
no.
Also, yeah, look out.
And our daughter has green eyes. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, and Rh negative seems to be also to
Right.
Disproportionately high.
About 4 in 10 are Rh
roughly.
Negative, and we only make up, I happen to be that one, we make up only, I think, 9% of the population, or something like 1 in 9 people have Rh negative,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
And so again, that's a disproportionate thing. So they like Rh negative blood, they like green eyes, and they particularly take a lot of Basque people. It seems like the Basque race is targeted for abduction a lot, and they happen to be more high Rh negative in the Basque race than in any other race.
The highest proportion of Rh negative of any race on the planet.
Right. And so we started realizing that they're not taking samples, they're harvesting a product. And I made an analogy in the book, like it's like a farmer's cow. He puts his cow out into the field to eat grass and make milk, and then he abducts the cow into the barn and removes the milk, and then puts the cow back out to make more milk in the field. And the farmer also protects his prize cow from predators, say. And so this family spirit guide, we think, has been both preying on the family and protecting members of the family as well, not because they need their DNA for some.
Yeah, he has shown up to different family members at different times, and actually saved at least one family member's life that I know of for sure.
And maybe his too. Maybe Stephen's too.
Yeah. And my Uncle Douglas, he was a Griffith, so he wasn't a direct bloodline at all. He was married to my mother's older sister. So I'm a Shaw, and so Doug Griffiths married Marie. And when Doug was stationed in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, just after World War II, he was an RAF pilot, and he was awakened again in the middle of the night by this tall figure that said, Douglas, you have to get out right now because you're going to be attacked by
these rebels.
Yeah. You know, you're either going to get killed, either you're going to get shot, or you're going to get stabbed with a machete. And he somehow knew intuitively that this was Old Glegley. This was the family spirit guide. Because this family spirit guide just disappeared.
Disappeared right in front of him.
He didn't say no. He said, okay. So he got out, and sure enough, about a minute or two later, rebels came in and killed a number of the guys, some with machetes and some with guns. But he told me this story on a couple different occasions, and my Uncle Doug was not a guy that had flights of fancy. He was a very sanguine, very lucid individual, and he told me this stuff, and it was very private stuff. And my Aunt Marie, she definitely backed him up because she knew about this stuff. Her mother had seen Old Glegley. My mom had seen Old Glegley. Different people had seen Old Glegley. In fact, I think I saw Old Glegley once when I was 18, which we have in the book, which was a very unusual, to put it mildly, unusual occurrence. If you want to hear about it.
Yeah. That was the one where there was actually some physical.
There was physical evidence
afterwards.
Physical evidence, exactly.
They tend to come in clusters, these events. Philip had like 3 in a row, and then the third night was when he saw the gray alien.
The tall gray, yeah.
And then Stephen had 5 incidents happen in 1 week.
It was my dad, my sister, and then also my mom and my brother. That happened in January of 1979 when I was still 18. It started the first night where my dad came in the morning. We were cabinet makers, so we worked together and lived in the house. And he said, Stephen, my closet doors opened and closed on me last night. I said, okay, Dad. I just thought he was joking.
Or no big deal.
Or no big deal, right?
The wind, yeah.
So the next night, I just had given my dad this book by Paramahansa Yogananda on metaphysical meditations to read. Just because I was into that, I was studying Tai Chi and I'm teaching Tai Chi and whatever. So I was really into that kind of stuff. So about half an hour later, after I gave him this book, 9:30 at night, again, it's dark, he came into my room and said, he had this perplexed look on his face. And he said, Stephen, I'm hearing a silver bell. I said, okay, Dad. So I went into the living room, and sure enough, there was the sound of a silver bell being rung inside the wall by the fireplace. And it was inside the wall, not inside the fireplace. So we got my sister. She heard the same thing. We banged on the wall, looked up the chimney, couldn't find anything. It was just there for about 10 or 15 minutes.
And then simultaneously, a bell rings at the other house where his mother is.
Yes, we found that out the next day. Because my brother was going to school up in Sonora, and my mom was living at the house that we're building in. So we would call every morning, right? And my mom, Irene, she said, I heard this bell and I picked up the phone last night. Philip says the phone didn't ring, but I picked up the phone and there was this voice, a male voice on the other end saying, I am the invisible on Beachy, or something like that.
We still don't know what the heck that
we still don't know what that was all about. But it was happening at the exact same time that we were having this silver bell being rung at the house, 350 miles away. Now, the next night, I was awakened by this whizzing sound in my room. I go, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And I just thought first it was like, I was hearing things or like a bug or something like that. So I just didn't pay much attention to it. So I rolled over on my left side, tried to go back to sleep. And then my bed was pushed twice from the base of the bed, kind of gentle push, like somebody just pushing it, right? And thinking maybe it's like an earthquake. I live in Southern California. So anyway, so I try to ignore it, and then it gets pushed again, a little stronger. And then the third time, a lot stronger. And then by this time, I'm getting upset and worried. And then I get 3 taps on my right shoulder, just like somebody has an index finger going tap, tap, tap. And at this point, I want to confront whatever it is, because is it my dad playing a trick on me, or what is going on? So I rolled over and said, what? And I could tell there was something there, but I couldn't see anything. But I could tell something was there. And then I blacked out. Okay, so the next night, I did not want to sleep in that room. Okay, I said, okay, no, I'm not sleeping in that room. So I slept in the living room on the couch in my work clothes. And I woke about 5:30 in the morning. And being a musician, I looked at my piano, thinking about what I was going to play that day, and heard the fountain in the other room. And, I was relaxed, but I was awake. I was alert. And from behind me, from the front door, this tall blue-white entity, skinny, tall blue-white entity, about 6 to 7 feet tall maybe, came walking, floating towards me in about a second and a half to 2 seconds, filling the whole room with intense blue-white light. It stopped by my right side, and immediately the whole right side of my body became paralyzed. Not in a scary way, but in a way that I could not move. And this entity bowed down to me. Sorry about that. It bowed down to me and it said, Steve, in kind of a whisper, but it was not inside my head. It was outside. It was definitely whispering to me. I couldn't tell it was male or female. I had the feeling that it was male. I wasn't completely sure. And part of me was like saying, oh my God, I'm going to actually see Olegly. I'm going to see the family spirit guide. So part of me was like, wow, I'm going to actually see and have an experience. But the other half of me was saying, dude, you can't move. Okay. Half your body is paralyzed. So I was a 50-50 mix of excitement and being scared. And that lasted for about maybe 5 or 10 seconds, as far as I can tell, and then it left. The entity left with the blue-white light and went out the front door. Now, I told my dad about that. Oh, I did. Sorry.
Yeah, in the
I
book we say that he told his dad about it, but when we regressed him further, we discovered that he has no actual clear memory of what happened after.
I don't have any clear memory. I know we probably talked about it at breakfast, but it was the only thing that I knew that was really interesting was that 6 hours later at 11:30, I decided to go get some lunch for us, and I reached into my right hand side pocket and I pulled out all the coins in my pocket, and all the coins, I kid you not, all the coins were magnetized. Okay, these are standard American coins. You could pick up the American coins each with each other. I had a couple nails in there too, but you could pick up the coins. My dad could pick up the coins. This is 6 hours after this happened, and we just did not know what to make of it.
And it's supposed to be impossible to magnetize American coins. They make them that way on purpose so that they can go into vending machines.
Right.
Otherwise
go through TSA. But the last thing that happened, I have no memory of. My dad does. The last thing that happened was he was awakened in the middle of the night, and his bedroom was facing my bedroom, but there's a hallway in between, and he was awakened by seeing this intense blue-white light outside of my bedroom door,
kind of flooding out of his room.
And my dad was getting pretty miffed about all this stuff. Said, I want to find out what's going on. So he started to get out of bed, and this voice inside his head this time said, Jeffrey, just go back to sleep. Everything's fine. Nothing to worry about. Just go back to sleep. And I have absolutely no memory of that. I have no memory of that, what happened at that time. I mean, I could have been taken. I have no idea.
I'm pretty sure he was.
but definitely, I've had interaction. I mean, for a fact, I've had interaction and physical evidence too of it.
And then, we have a lot of the family's different experiences, too many to talk about here. I put them on these series we put on Instagram at leslie.shaw.author. If people want to dive into more of the family's experiences are there. And then, he had all this stuff he was telling me during the first part of our marriage. I'd listened to a lot of these strange stories, and he'd seen already 3 UFOs by 2004. And I had still seen nothing. And I know I'm a dutiful wife. I believed what he was telling me, but you can only believe it like 95% until you really see it yourself. And then sure enough, 2005, my first and the most important UFO, I've seen 2, but this one was we were driving home. I was driving and saw it through the windshield in front of us, a bright white light in the sky, and I thought maybe it's a plane flying into Palm Springs. But then staring at it, I realized it doesn't have any of the other extra lights, the running lights that planes have.
Yeah, it was from Joshua Tree to Yucca Valley.
Yeah, so it's just big white light in the sky that just hovered there, and it got brighter and brighter and brighter, and then suddenly it at supersonic speed, full speed, it shot away over the northern horizon and was gone in less than a second. It had to have been less than even a half second, more like a quarter of a second.
Yeah, it was very, very fast.
If I had to describe the speed, I would have guessed something like 20,000 miles an hour. And it went at that speed instantaneously, not like ramping up to that speed slowly. Sure. Nothing else can do that. Only the UFOs are capable of that. Because a light in the sky could be any number of things, but not what
so that's
20,000 miles an hour.
So that's when we started to entertain at least doing some more
starting
research,
to write the book,
because there too much strangeness in my family background that just didn't make sense.
I have actually a question geared towards your background, Stephen. So you have the ancient Chinese medicine modalities type of background, and I did go do a deep dive, and I had listened to, I think it's the Parapeculiar podcast. And you had went into a whole explanation because, for like the paranormal community, as far as like hauntings and everything, things tend to happen, 1 to 3 a.m. Normally 3 a.m. is what they call the witching hour, the devil's hour.
That's the liver time.
It's the liver time. Okay. Could you actually dive a bit deeper on that? And do you find that there's a connection of the ancient Chinese medicine to potentially be information maybe that could have been taught to the practitioners in ancient times from extraterrestrials.
Oh yeah, I can definitely dive into that. I mean, as a matter of fact, there's a whole school of Chinese medicine that if you're going to treat a certain condition that you know, let's say for instance, a certain practitioner knows that they're called what are called yuan points and low connecting points. Okay, and so if you know that, for instance, it is a you do it by palpation of the channels and by tongue and pulse diagnosis, and you know that to treat a certain condition, let's say it's a liver related issue, that you have to use the one source and then the low connecting points at 2 o'clock in the morning, okay, when it's high tide, okay, or you have to go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to treat the polar opposite.
From a Wang Di, and he might have been an alien. Actually, remember?
Oh, Huang Di, yeah, Huang Di came down. The Yellow Emperor came down in this fiery dragon type chariot that was breathing fire. That sounds a lot like
a spaceship,
a spaceship,
a rocket,
right? And was able to see all the meridians and basically set up the beginning of Chinese medicine.
He could actually see through into the person's body and see the acupuncture channels and the points. And so he was able to create the entire form of medicine.
Some people today, but it's about 1 in a million in China, that they will have actually literally, you can actually see physically one or two of the acupuncture channels will actually be visible on the body. I mean, it's still happening today where you'll see like lines that are actually where the channels are. It's really fascinating stuff. So Chinese medicine is and that, and teaching Tai Chi and learning Tai Chi and also monkey kung fu and a few other different things really had a strong influence upon my development as far as my understanding of things. But I came from a background of people that were psychic. So
when he was doing Tai Chi, he became a master of it quite young and was teaching it through his adulthood. And that opens your chakras because it's a moving meditation. And so he was actually, and as you open your chakras, you'll start to get these other abilities. You'll get your ability to astral project becomes more possible, and also he became a lot more psychic. And this guy's ridiculous. He's constantly pulling stuff out of my brain, before I say it, he says it.
Words that don't even exist.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, sometimes. And we think that there is a component with the abduction phenomenon and whether people are psychic or maybe have opened these chakras themselves through work. Later in life, when we got married, we started studying Kundalini raising practices and chakra opening practices. And for the first time in my life, I started to be able to astral project as well. But for me, astral projection was fun, but it was not fun for Stephen so much, because it seems like whenever the veil comes down between the two worlds, that these beings that have been harassing him his whole life are there. They're on the other side of this veil, almost like waiting for him to enter the astral plane so that they can communicate with him and harass him, really.
Yes, sometimes usually it's kind of like harassment. I mean, I can attribute, I think, a couple times in my life where my life has been saved by protectors, especially on April Fool's Day back in 1992. That was for sure one of them. But generally speaking, the astral projection stuff is, it's like a hit and miss for me. Sometimes it can be fun, other times it can be really scary. So I'm not really sure on that.
Yeah, he's talking about April 1st. He almost drowned, and he was saved by this lifeguard. And then a few seconds later, the lifeguard just vanishes. He's gone. Nobody knows where he went or and this is a long, empty beach. It's like, where can people go? And so we think that might have been another old Glegley intervention.
My ex-wife. Michael Phelps could not have gotten to me in 2 seconds. He could not have gone 150 feet in 2 seconds. So.
But guys, have any other questions on that stuff?
Kind of. So there was another podcast, and I don't know if it was part of Parapeculiar or maybe it was part of another one, where you guys were talking about obviously us humans, we only use about 3% of our brain.
Yeah.
I love sci-fi and action movies, and I immediately thought of Lucy with Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, of
That
course.
shows you the
Love ScarJo.
progression, right? But I noticed you guys had theorized that those who are obviously well versed in this type of meditation or opening up the chakras, like the monks and the Dalai Lamas have tapped into more than probably 3% of the brain power that we actually use.
For sure.
And they're reaching a higher sense of enlightenment. Do you think it's probably the enlightenment that they reach is probably more closer to what extraterrestrials?
I it's really interesting that you're bringing it up, because as an example, in our country, the Native American Indians, they have a totally different viewpoint of the Star Brothers and the Ant people and the Anunnaki. They don't look at them from the same point with that we do, with kind of like fear. They look at it and say, yeah, we know they're here. They've been here before. They've helped us out. So yeah, I believe that we believe that the Tibetans and the monks and whatever, yeah, they certainly have a lot more connection, and they're not seeing it from the same standpoint that we do.
Right.
We're really kind of like fear based, here in the United States, and unfortunately, and we're also very much what's the word? We're basically xenophobic. We're xenophobic, and we just like the different things or the weird things or whatever. We tend to like look at it from like that's kind of weird or different. No, so yeah, I believe we from what I've seen is that, especially like in my family, we just accept this stuff as being that it's real.
Right.
And especially when, let's say, like in martial arts, if you get hit in the face 1,000 times, 1,001 doesn't really mean anything. But if you get hit in the face 1 or 2 times, then it really hurts. So it gets normalized. So
Yeah,
for me, like
it became normal,
it became normal. Okay, like
Oh, the spirit guide is here again.
I can't tell you how many times in my life I've heard, as I'm getting to sleep, I've heard like
right behind his head,
three knocks right behind my head on
like
the wall.
I said, just as he's entering this nice sleepy astral,
or
thing,
a door being slammed, or a plate glass window being broken, or a loud voice, or sometimes a nice musical instrument, whatever. But it's like people that have ability like I do or whatever, because I've been a musician my whole life, which I think that also helps you too with this kind of stuff. It's like you end up you have the ability to like tune into more than one channel. We're on channel like 97.1 right now because we're at 40 brainwave cycles per second, because we're in the beta state. But you get into the alpha state, the theta state, the delta state. That allows you to be able to tune into different channels.
Now,
and as simple as that.
I'm like you, Chrissy. I'm like a research person more than I just love researching. So I began researching the phenomenon and looking at an enormous pile of data that we sifted through for about 10 years. And we started realizing that the premise that these beings come here from distant star systems was just not adding up, because they've been here for thousands of years. My background is also in I minored in college in ancient art history, and so we've been seeing evidence of their existence and their tampering with humanity for thousands of years. And we know that they're seen 10,000 times a year worldwide. Most people don't realize it's quite that high, but it's even higher than that. That's how many are reported per year. And we think reporting is at about 10%. So they're really being seen 100,000 times a year, every year, going back hundreds of years at least, if not thousands of years.
Yeah.
Have you
not jibing with them coming from distant star systems,
Have you guys looked into? They call it the UFO cult, but they're not really a cult whenever you actually look at them. So I'm a big Josh Gates fan. I love Expedition X and all of his other shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And there is an episode he does where he goes to Thailand. He sends his crew to Thailand, and there's actually a group, Kalukal, I think is how you say it. And they go in Thailand, there's a small group. And back in 2011, they had what they do is they meditated on the side of a mountain. And what they're meditating for is they put themselves in a deep meditation and they receive messages from extraterrestrials. And in 2011, one of the members got a message about it's either the tsunami or it was a really big earthquake that really shook Japan to its core. And they were like, well, how did you do that? You know, they started to investigate them and they're like, oh, well, we sit on the mountainside, we go into a deep meditation, and, you know, they give us messages essentially. Have you guys looked into that group?
Yeah, that's very possible that is happening. Edgar Casey, for instance, was in contact with what looks to be a gray alien named, what was his name? Paul Jal or something like some three-letter word that I can't remember right now. But yes, we think, like I said, they're here with us. Mm-hmm. We think they live here with us, and they're in telepathic communication with us frequently. And we think that's further evidence that their brains are very similar to ours, because I don't think they could be in telepathic communication with us if they weren't similar to our brains.
Yeah, the human brain, we on a couple of different podcasts, I went into talking about how, for instance, let's say when a person thinks of a tree, you don't automatically think of how to spell tree, Tree, right? You
visualize a tree.
There's thousands of different languages on the planet to start with, right? But what you first think about, you see a picture, all right? And so the original languages on the planet were developed as pictographic, basically a representational type of stuff. You know, you want to represent a tree or a man walking, like in Chinese, pictographic, ideographic.
The Sumerians
language.
Too.
They show a man walking with a leg forward. That's the picture that shows a man. So it's understood that's a man. So basically, like the English language is like 2 or 3 generations further more advanced than a pictographic language. It takes a lot more development of the mind to understand that this means this. So also too, when you see things like were built in Egypt, whatever, the pyramids, you cannot build something like the pyramids without having to have a blueprint. You have to understand language. You have to be able to talk. You have to be able to draw stuff. You have to be able to have a plan. You have to have architects and engineers. All this stuff cannot be built by cultures that just have bronze tools or copper tools that don't have the ability to have language.
That was a problem that I had with my early art history education. It kept not making any sense, you know, that there's no way. They're attributing the Great Pyramid complex at Giza to these copper wielding tool makers, and they're not even bronze tools makers, and they're supposedly able to cut rose quartz. Rose quartz is a 7 on the Mohs scale. You can take a copper tool and hit a piece of rose quartz all day, and it'll just
Plus you have to have a
flatten
plan.
the tool.
You have to have a plan. You have to have a reason plan.
Speaking about languages, one thing that me and Ian both noticed with our Tale of Two Bettys, there was a book in both of those stories. And I was going to ask you, Stephen, in your experience, or I'm sorry, that's not your name. Yeah, Stephen. In your experience or in the experience of anybody in your family, was there ever any reference to a blue book? Do you know anything about a blue book?
You mean Project Blue Book?
No. When Betty Hill was abducted, they tried to give her a blue book, but there started like a fight on the ship and they couldn't have it. When Andreasen was abducted, she was actually given a blue book with their language in it to go over for about 10 days, and then it disappeared.
No, the whole thing as far as like the alien stuff is basically from Leslie and myself.
Yeah, we don't have. He never got a blue book, but
I did talk to my parents on a few different times. I actually tried to. I said, you guys aren't telling me something, right? I just started to believe at a certain point that this whole O'Glegley thing was a lot more than I was being told.
and
But
unfortunately, Stephen, we've tried to with hypnotic regression, we've tried to break through, in his case, into these blackout periods to find out, exactly what was happening to him in these blackout periods. But so far, we've been unable to break through the block. It's pretty well placed.
I know that I can be hypnotized because I was hypnotized on my 19th birthday, July 28th, 1979. I went to the Pat Collins Hip Hypnotist show that was in Sunset and Doheny in Southern California with my girlfriend at the time, and I got on stage. I was one of the 9 people that got on the stage, and we did the stiff as a board, light as a feather, and she did the thing with like you can't feel pain as far as like with the lighter and that kind of stuff. And the funny thing is that she asked everybody who was on stage, she asked them different questions. And I was the last one on stage. And she asked me, okay, what's your name? Steven? Oh, his name's Steven, right? I said, well, I want you to visualize me naked. And Pat Collins was a very big woman that had this really garish makeup on and had this all this glittery stuff on her. And I looked at her and I just busted up.
And you saw him.
I saw her. I actually saw her naked, and then I became her dog. I became her dog for the rest of the night. She had me singing about getting my penis back from a girl in front of the audience. And she wanted me to be James Bond and jump onto a table, which I didn't do, luckily.
Yeah.
But I remember that night when I came home that I had the most incredible dreams of blue arts. You're speaking of blue, right? But I could actually close my eyes about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I could see going from right to left these pictures of these blue landscapes that were like I'd never seen before, and just absolutely gorgeous. And I could just like watch one go by, then watch another one go by, and watch another one go by, all in blue. I mean, that's just like an aside, but it's like I thought that might be interesting, but it's like
No, that is quite interesting. Blue seems to be with your
Color.
experiences with the blue lights and
yeah,
stuff, and then blue seems to be a color that they really seem to be drawn to.
Yes.
yeah. I mean, it's like I'd never seen paintings ever like that. It was like fantastic, and it was like I was just watching them as a casual observer, like going through a what do you call it,
A museum
museum?
or
Yes,
art gallery.
yeah, something like that. Right. It was great. It was wonderful.
Well, what was it that Betty said about their language being like matter instead of like a written language?
Betty Andreasen's daughter, I believe she's still alive, but she was abducted quite a few times, and she says that she was taught their language, and she says that it's not a written language or even a picture language, or like it's more a living language. It's a flowing language, it's a moving language, so it's not really something you can read or write down. It's more something you feel, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like
That
you understand it just
right.
intuitively, right?
It totally makes sense. That's one of the reasons why I think that they have the ability to contact and basically communicate with pretty much anybody who speaks any language anywhere, because it's something more primal, it's something more important, it's something more basic. Okay, so you don't have to know how to say yes in Spanish versus yes in English. It's something much more primal in the brain. That's what that's what I believe anyway.
So going back, right? Because I think you're about to go on the inner Earth dwelling of the extraterrestrials. So I had brought this subject up to my husband. My husband's a gamer, and he plays. What does he play right now? Dragonair. It's an app on the phone. I don't know. Anyway, so he's got this really cute little tight-knit community. So he's like, hey, just hop in Discord and ask them a question. And I said, okay, cool. So we were talking about, and it's so funny because I was just listening to Belle's and Bill's episode about the stairs. By the way,
stairs.
The stairs in the middle of the
that
forest.
episode.
Okay, so obviously we know like national parks, they have like tons of disappearances, right? And normally national parks or those wooded areas, you also tend to see Bigfoots, right?
Yep.
And someone had asked, and I'm actually kind of curious as to your point of view on this, but do we think Bigfoot happens to be working with the extraterrestrials that are dwelling inside Earth by using the cave systems to kidnap those who have not been found in the national forest?
Yes, it wasn't in our book, but it'll probably be in our second book. But I do have a theory on Bigfoot. You see, we think that these are not aliens exactly, but are human beings that split away from our race thousands and thousands of years ago and have since mutated into other slightly different creatures,
evolved differently.
Right. Some have evolved into the reptilians, some have evolved into the insectoids, some into the greys, some into the Nordic aliens, which Nordic aliens are indistinguishable from human beings. They look like tall Swedes, Swedish people.
Sure.
And we think but every one of these different alien types all have the same skeletal structure as we do. I've been in communication with a guy who's having sex with an insectoid queen, and she's been taking him for a long time, and she recently introduced him to their offspring. They have this bizarre breeding program with human beings where they're making these hybrid alien races. And I asked him, I said, well, okay, you've had sex with her, so you're pretty close. Are we talking a different skeletal structure here or what? And he says, no, it's exactly like our skeletal structure. And we hear a lot of reports about people seeing these aliens from a slight distance and at first thinking that they're looking at humans. Mm-hmm. And they're moving like humans. They almost look like humans. And until they get closer, then they see the eyes are too big and black and the heads are slightly too large. But if they are standing exactly like we are and moving exactly like we are, it's because they have the same skeletal structure and the same musculature that we have.
Yeah, Lonnie Zamora, the cop in 1964 in Socorro, New Mexico.
Yeah, he was 50 feet away.
About 100 feet away, whatever, and he thought that they were either small children, whatever.
He thought they were small children or large adults, and I mean the other way around, small adults or large children.
Yes.
And then he saw them moving, and as he got closer, they saw him, and then he realized he was looking at aliens, and they ran into their ship, and it took off. But he said they move just like human beings, and if they move like us, I mean, think about our closest relative on this planet besides these aliens.
The bonobo chimp.
The chimp. And they move nothing like us, right? They're barely able to stand. And when they're frightened, they run away on all fours and take to the trees. And this is our closest relative on the planet.
Yeah, within about 1% of DNA difference.
But we have a lot more physically in common with these aliens than we do with any other creature on our planet.
And Bigfoot.
And Bigfoot. And
yes.
One thing, there's this bizarre thing about Bigfoot. I believe that a lot of these races are in underground cities planted inside the earth. And we believe that they separated from us on purpose because of a comet strike that happened 13,000 years ago that almost wiped us out. All of us surface people, we got chucked back into the Stone Age, where all of the people that took refuge deep underground and took their technology with them, they are 13,000 years technologically speaking ahead of us because they didn't lose their technology, right? Whereas we had to start over on the surface.
Just like the billionaires are doing all their building of their super houses underground right now.
Yeah.
They're all planning ahead of time. They figure, okay, the next disaster.
They're already doing it.
They're already spending multiple billions of dollars building these superstructures underground. It's happening right now. It's kind of funny.
And when we were on the premise that these are beings from different star systems and they're completely alien from us, it just wasn't making sense. But as soon as we took the premise that maybe these are humans that have separated from us, suddenly it makes tons of sense. That's why they are seen 10,000 times or reported 10,000 times a year, seen 100,000 times a year. Why they're so terrified of our nukes, our nuclear weapons.
That's a big tell.
A distant star system creature, why would they give a rat's ass if we blew ourselves up or not, But they live here and are worried about their own asses. They're worried. They've got skin in the game, as we call it.
They got their own butts on the line, too.
Right.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So they're constantly following our nuclear weapons all over the world, all our military, every single time they go out on maneuvers, they're being followed.
That's what we heard from Graves and Grush at the congressional hearings this past summer.
And that's why
we didn't know that. We did not know that how often they were being followed. That we found that out. That every single time they go out on maneuvers, that there are UFOs that are like
these things are dogging their steps right behind them. And then suddenly it makes sense why they're seen for thousands of years. They've lived here for thousands of years. They share the planet with us. That's why they're seen thousands of years.
You hear hoofbeats, look for horses, not zebras.
And why they can have sex with us and make babies. Hello? They're having sex with us and making babies. They're not, I thought, well, if they're trying to do this hybrid thing, I started researching it and I thought, well, maybe they're using genetic modification and in vitro fertilization and stuff. But no, they're having sex and getting pregnant.
The fun way, yeah.
And if you're having sex and getting pregnant, it has to be a very close cousin to you. It cannot be a completely different species, right? And
sure.
And people are wondering, well, what do they want? And we think that our government discovered these creatures living under our feet in the 40s, and there is a theory that Eisenhower met with them. We have some evidence for it
in the 50s.
The 50s, and made kind of a treaty with them that they would keep their secret. They would let us have some of their technology in exchange for keeping their secret and not interfering with their bizarre breeding program that they're doing with us. Not that we could have interfered with it anyway, but we we made the deal. And we think that they've been, of course, stonewalling us for 80 years, lying to us about it. And when Luis Elizondo released those videos, the famous ones, Go Fast, Gimbal,
2017,
and the Tic Tac videos, these are military videos, and we know since they're going out on maneuvers and they're being followed all the time, we know there's miles of this kind of footage they're still not sharing with us, right? They're still attacking whistleblowers. We were hoping for a new age of discovery, but we're not getting it so far.
No, they kind of actually retracted themselves about a month and a half ago. There was this supposed report that came out of the Pentagon where they're saying that it was from the Arrow group, which took over from ATIP, and they're basically saying that, oh, we have no evidence at all that there's extraterrestrials, which is kind of funny you're saying that because we call them intraterrestrials.
Yeah,
so in a sense, they're not
really extraterrestrials.
They're not really extraterrestrials. They're really interterrestrials. So it's
except we think they do have bases on Mars and the Moon and other parts of our solar system.
Maybe on Phobos, the Moon is
So in that way, yes, they're extraterrestrials if they're coming here from Mars, but mostly we think they live here amongst us. And that's why we can also be telepathic with each other too. Yeah. I think it's because we have very similar brains.
Sure.
Okay.
Is this clicking? Is this going grok?
It makes sense.
It definitely does make sense.
Yes, we think so.
Yeah, we try and look at it from a what's the most obvious thing, I myself being a former doctor of acupuncture, it's like the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid, but also to what's most likely? Is it is it a horse or is it a zebra? If you're in Kenya, which I've actually been to, you hear hoofbeats. It might be a gazelle, it might be a zebra, it might not be a horse. But here in the United States, it's probably a horse.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a zebra, but it's not likely, is it?
But likely it's not. It's like this.
And we think they used to play gods. They used to play gods to us, like the whole pantheon of Egypt. We think were these beings,
and Rome and Greece, and
Greece, and and they can't get away with that anymore. So we think now they're pretending to be space aliens, from far, far away, and that this is all.
It's a little bit smoke and mirrors. They don't want us. They want us looking under our feet. They want us looking
up instead of down. Yeah.
So sure. They want to misdirect us. That's really what it is, from what we can see.
And we think that. Did you guys hear about the Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd's Armada?
No.
1947, February 26th.
We think it was Admiral Byrd that finally was the one that told us about cued us into the fact that these creatures were there.
Our cousins.
Yeah. Admiral Byrd was an explorer and an adventurer and an admiral, a Navy admiral. And he had he won the Medal of Honor. He was a hero, a national hero. This man of unimpeachable character, right? And in the 30s, before the war, Hitler was showing this bizarre interest in Antarctica. He devoted enormous resources to the continent, sending ships and engineers and mining equipment and personnel. And there were some rumors floating around that they had found an underground paradise, supposedly, in Antarctica. So after the war is over, I believe our government knew or suspected that there was a Nazi base under the ice in Antarctica. And they sent Admiral Byrd in charge of an armada to destroy this base called Operation High Jump. But when they got to Antarctica, it was a 6-month mission. When they got to Antarctica, they were actually attacked by flying saucers. These flying saucers flew up out of the ocean and shot these rays at the ships. They sank a destroyer and downed half their carrier-based aircraft and killed dozens of men. And after this incident, the mission was over. They turned tail and ran back to South America. But then we think, before they turned tail and ran away, we think Admiral Byrd got into a plane with a small crew and flew into the hole in the ice sheet that they had discovered.
He had one co-pilot.
And this is this posthumously released diary. Many people know about this diary, but they didn't know about the Operation High Jump thing. That was when he went back to Washington, they muzzled him, but good on that. And we barely got information on that
But
later.
He did do one interview in Buenos Aires.
Before he came back.
Yes, he did say, we are dealing with an enemy that can fly from pole to pole. And
should there be another war, we're dealing with an enemy that can fly from pole to pole in a matter of seconds.
A guy who became admiral before anybody else, earliest in his career, had unimpeachable character. Why would he be saying complete garbage? What was his motivation? But and also too, what was our motivation about a year and a half after World War II to mount the biggest military operation of its time, to go down to Antarctica to look for this? Because we knew about this because of all the papers that we got from Berlin, and also from guys like von Braun, and the ones that we did with Operation Paperclip. We knew that stuff
what Hitler was doing down there. Yeah.
So we knew there's something was going on. So exactly. So you got to look for the motivation, and motivation, they had a big motivation.
And so many people have heard about this diary, but he essentially has a meeting with these people that live under the ice sheet. He describes them as tall men, blonde-haired, blue-eyed men. Again, it's always people, right? They're people.
Again.
And they have a slightly Germanic or Nordic accents. And they essentially tell us that you've entered the kingdom of the Ariani. Normally, we try and have nothing to do with you people and your barbaric wars. They think of us as barbarians, and we kind of are. And
valid.
and they told us,
Yep.
but now you guys are messing with nuclear weapons, and we want you to stop. And we think that the meeting with Eisenhower they had later, which was supposed to be with Nordic aliens.
Valiant Thor.
No, that was later.
That was
Valiant. This is Eisenhower meeting with the aliens, the Nordic aliens. We believe that they made this deal to keep them quiet, but where was I going with it?
Valiant Thor, 1957. Remember?
That
Valiant
was later. That was at the White
57,
House.
Yeah.
In the Pentagon. So again, Valiant Thor, another human. He lands in a spaceship in Virginia and spends 3 years advising the Pentagon and the White House. And he's a Caucasian red-haired man, right? Oh, and I remember. So the Ariani told us that we think that Eisenhower, they wanted to get us to denuclearize. We think that was their main agenda, and they were not able to get that from us. Eisenhower wouldn't go for it. And so they proved to us later that they can turn off our nukes whenever they want to. They, at the Malmstrom incident.
Yeah, 1966, Montana.
Have you all heard about that one? There was 10 nuclear warheads at this base in Montana, and a UFO showed up and was floating right outside the front gate. And then one after another, all of the nuclear weapons went offline. 1, 2, 3, all 10. And all of these were on separate systems, completely separate systems. So they would have had to hack each one, bam, 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 right after one after another.
And they did this in the United Kingdom and Russia.
Right. There was another incident here in the U.S. also called the Minot incident, where they also tampered with our nukes. I think this was they were giving us a message loud and clear that they can turn our nukes off whenever they want to. And we think that's what they're doing now. We think they're dogging our military everywhere we go to make sure we don't blow up the world. They're interbreeding with us. Why? We think maybe to integrate at some point, or possibly to infiltrate our society, and then possibly change us slowly from within.
And now we're AI.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it on that strain of thought. I've heard, I don't know if you've ever heard stories about black-eyed kids or BEKs.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
One train of thought is that they are extraterrestrials doing sort of a training. Yeah. So I was going to say, do you believe that the BEKs are possibly just hybrids and they're kind of like training to be people?
That's what I believe.
Oh man, that's a really, really good question, because I've heard some really scary stuff about that.
Yeah. They look like kind of normal children.
They do. They look very much like children until they ask you for ketchup for their apple.
Have you ever noticed how similar the abduction thing is to the mythos of vampires and a succubus and an incubus? How similar they are.
Yeah.
But again, it's like the evolution of the aliens are no longer playing gods; they're playing space alien, right? So, which basically are brothers or cousins. So, of course, with vampires, they come in the middle of the night. They're very powerful. They hypnotize you. They paralyze you. They always take DNA
in the form of blood.
frequently again and again, and then they can shapeshift, or they can change form. Sounds very similar to what happens with the alien abduction,
right?
And also too, the sexual component with the incubus and the succubus. So
we think that the Nordics maybe have created the Greys race, to do their bidding, because the Greys do not behave like normal beings, like normal beings. They're completely emotionless. They are very automaton-like. They do repetitive motions exactly the same again and again. They have they frequently terrify or injure or cause pain to their abductees, and no matter how the abductee cries or begs, they're completely emotionless. They don't care one way or another about us.
Oh well.
And they never wonder what to do next. They're very goal driven, self-individual bunch, and we don't take the yoke well. And
No.
so we think that they created gray aliens that are intelligent, but have no emotions at all. And we think that
they're telepathic though too.
But I think they use genetic modification to things just like we would use any tool. And what I think Bigfoot is that they have genetically modified Bigfoot from early forms of what could have been Bigfoot, like a Gigantopithecus rather,
yeah,
and
and
the Australopithecus robustus, is another possible candidate for a Bigfoot hybrid being.
And they go back 300,000 years too, is where the most.
And then there's this bizarre lake in India called Rupkund. It's on the border of India and Nepal, way up in the Himalayas, up like 14,000
feet
above the tree line. This lake, somebody discovered that this lake is filled with skeletons, human skeletons, and a lot of them have their heads bashed in, like with a club or something. And people thought, well, maybe there was a war and there was a big field of dead bodies, and they just threw them in the lake.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then they start DNA testing these skeletons, and no, they span like 1,000 years, and all different races
too. Gaelic.
So, some of the British explorers, and and this race and that race, just people that may have wandered up into those mountains and were murdered and thrown into the lake, and not just murdered, but murdered, right? I think the Yeti, in this case, the Bigfoot of the Himalayas, I think they're using them as sentries to protect the entrances to their underground bases. And one of these bases is Mount Kailash, and Lake Rupkund is on the slopes of Mount Kailash. So it's right where you might have an entrance to your underground world. And we think that they're using these Yetis as guard dogs, so to speak. And if you also look at the possibility that Lemuria, as everyone knows, was a continent in the Pacific that sank under the waves when our water levels rose. When the ice started to melt again
13,000 years ago.
Yeah, so there was supposed to be a whole population of Lemurians on this continent that was doomed to be swallowed by the waves, and of course there's a lot of stories about them moving into Mount Shasta. And Mount Shasta is a perfect, volcanoes are a perfect place to make a safe haven for meteor strike or comet strike, because the throat of a volcano goes all the way down to the magma,
20, 30, 40 miles,
almost
sometimes.
through the crust, all the way through the crust. And branching off from that throat are all these enormous
lava
tubes, huge caverns already pre-made. So if you want to move an entire population underground fast, an extinct volcano is the perfect place, right? And of course, Shasta's famous for UFO. I was flying in and out of the mountain all the time, and Bigfoot lives all around us. There's Bigfoot sightings all around there.
Yeah, the Modoc Indians are famous for saying, we see this stuff all the time.
So we think they're using Bigfoots as as sentries, and that's why they disappear. They're going back down underground. That's why we never find settlements of them or even camps of them, right? But they just go back inside. They're Lemurian Bigfoot wrangler. He's probably keeping tabs on the 10 Bigfoots he sends out every night to monitor the area, the region around. And then when they're done monitoring, back inside the mountain.
Now you must think we're really nuts.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I personally was believing that Bigfoot was an interdimensional being that could portal. So, I mean, this makes a lot more sense, honestly. They're just going back in a hole in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. They're not like, they're not like living outside. It's a lot more cozy inside. You got geothermal. You got more bells and whistles. It's like,
and the Lemurians
anyway.
are great cooks. I hear they're terrific.
Yeah, they're good. They're 5-star chefs. I heard so.
No, and there are a lot of things that you pointed out that, I mean, they do that. It's kind of like put things together for me, like people living under the earth. Take Atlanteans. Instead of them wilderness. Drowning, they're just living in cities under the earth.
Right.
Reports of seeing UFOs going in and out of the water. How many times have I said they live under the water? Wow. There's a base under the water. They're going in and out of the water to get to their home. They live down there. Let's quit looking up there. Look down there.
Right.
Nobody ever listens.
I think the volcanoes, they go way down, right? And they can follow these lava tubes out. And possibly a lot of them go under the ocean levels. And so that they're launching from inside the mountain, but they go down their ramp and then up out of the ocean or up out of the lakes or mountains or mesas. We hear constantly reports about them coming up instead of, they're not coming down.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying, oh yeah, from distant stars, it came all the way down. Well, that's not true. Some people say
and probably some of you probably watched the movie with the Matt Damon, the Martian, when he was like on Mars, okay, and he had to figure out how to build to grow potatoes, that kind of stuff. So he took rocket fuel and he basically changed the rocket fuel into water so that he could grow the and then he used the human waste to build as fertilizer.
Bacteria, yeah.
So the thing is, we're playing around now with this whole idea of going to the moon. Right now it's between China and the United States. Who's going to get control of the South Pole? Because we know that there's water there.
They discovered water on the moon.
Discover water, and there's also a lot of what's called H3 on the moon too. H3 is an extremely strong source of power. Okay, so pretty much if you look at new territory,
and fuel.
They have tons of things like tungsten and titanium and all these different heavy metals that are on the surface of the moon. So right now we're looking at, okay, you can take water and make it into rocket fuel. You can make rocket fuel out of water. So it's like this thing. It's like, that, if the aliens are definitely living, let's say, on the Earth, they are definitely more advanced than we are. They can take water and basically make it into fuel or whatever they need to do.
Sure.
Because they're that much more advanced. In fact, we're playing around with CRISPR technology right now. We're playing around with curing blindness, bringing back the mammoth, bringing back the dodo bird, and we're just like in the beginning stages. Imagine what we would do as human beings, even with 50 more years now. I mean, where would we be in 50 more years?
It takes human beings 13,000 years to go from the caves to the moon. That's how long it took us to essentially recreate our technology that we had lost. And one of the reasons I like our theory best, one of the things I like best about it, is that it doesn't require theoretical science to be true. It doesn't require faster than light travel. It doesn't require wormholes, or it doesn't require interdimensional travel. Although there's an argument as to whether they're able to pass through dimensions and portals and stuff.
Yeah, they're able to do that.
And maybe that's true. I can't. I think it's kind of a mistake to try and understand their technology. I always feel like a gorilla poking at a cell phone or something like that, because it doesn't really. We can't understand it. It's beyond us. We're not there yet. We can't. It's an order of magnitude above our technology, but not a million years ahead of us, right? Doesn't it seem like it's about 13,000 years more advanced than us or so? When they were first being seen by biblical people who were taken up into the sky, to see the earth from above,
Enoch,
right? Enoch and some of the other saints, prophets from the Bible. They always describe the chariot coming down in a fiery chariot coming out of the sky. Yeah. So we think thousands of years ago they were using just good old-fashioned rocketry to get around, you know. Now we know that they use some kind of nuclear power in their ships, because people who get too close,
or quantum energy or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes the people who get too close to the UFOs, they'll actually get radiation burns on their skin.
Yeah.
And you know, UFOs are usually described as silent, except when they're really close, people hear a humming that's more felt than heard. And if you're feeling that, you're too close. Get away, run away, turn and run, you know. Because we don't recommend the abduction experience. A lot of people are like, take me, I want to go, I want to see an alien.
That's me, I want to go.
That's that guy right there. He wants to go so bad.
I was there too. Years ago, I would have held up a sign and said, take me, please.
All I can say is fire in the sky. Don't fire in the sky.
But, you know, now I've heard, okay, they cause searing pain. They don't care. They terrify you. They usually put you back. So what was the point of getting to go on the ship in the first place? And then, you know, we think sometimes they don't put them back. We think a lot of our missing people are taken and not put back, right?
Yeah, or they put them in a different spot.
Right, obviously they make mistakes like we make mistakes, so things don't always go 100%. You know, things aren't always 100%. You know, so there's maybe 5% where they screw up. You know, so
makes me wonder if it's a mistake or if somebody's just like, I wonder what'll happen if we take this person here and just go bloop.
I
like
your skin.
Yeah, let's play with your life and see what happens to you, you know.
I like your brain.
And they don't care how much they traumatize the people they take again and again and again.
No, they don't care about me, that's for sure.
But it's funny. I think we've got kind of what's that syndrome where
Stockholm
syndrome. Yeah. Where they
see, I did it again.
Thank you. Yeah, it pulls it right out of my head all the time. But this was not psychic. This was just what I was trying to think of. But anyway, so that's where they get the where some of the abductees that I talk to, they don't think of themselves as being victimized. And I think, really? You're being abducted, experimented on, terrified, and then put back. And this is, you're okay with this?
Normalizing.
It's like it happens so often to them through their lives. It's almost like they've made friends.
It's like what's happened to me. I don't know. It's maybe 100, maybe 150 times where I've heard that knocking behind my head on the wall. It's just that, you know, like I say, like in martial arts, you get punched in the face 1,000 times. 1,001 doesn't really mean that much. But if you get punched in the face 1 or 2 times, then you're going to feel it, because that's like something new and it's going to hurt. But you've already been punched in the face 1,000 times. 1,001 doesn't mean much. Like, it's kind of like we normalize things to keep ourselves sane. That's what human beings do.
Like, I'm doing a new series on this friend of mine. She's a 73-year-old woman who's an abduction victim. And she does all these paintings of her mentor, Sumi. And Sumi is an alien for sure. All these paintings are of aliens. If you go on her Instagram page, I've got 4 of her series posted already, and you can see what Sumi looks like.
She's bluish gray.
Yeah, she's like bluish gray skin, big black eyes, of course, those big black tilted eyes. And she sees a kind of a halo around her of energy, and she kind of paints it as hair. Sometimes she paints it as hair, and sometimes she paints it as kind of like a halo of energy. But Sumi has become a mentor to her, and is almost like a friend that she greets when Sumi comes. But she's still being violated. She called me this week and took pictures of her arm that she sent me through her phone, and she had this nightmare about being taken and restrained. And then she woke up in the next morning with 3 different wounds on her from the middle of the night, you know. So she's still being I consider this victimization myself. If somebody was doing this to me, I would consider myself being definitely put upon.
It's
And
very odd, to say the least.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if a human breaks into your house every night for, your life, and they assault you and take chunks out of your body and put needles in your body, they're going to go to jail.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's
Right.
not okay.
We're breaking several laws there.
Exactly.
It's like, just because you like try and erase our memory doesn't mean the trauma isn't still like embedded in our DNA. Like,
right.
No, it's almost like
Stand
that everybody should install Ring
Yeah.
cameras, in their house and outside their house, just like so that we can keep track, like on some of these paranormal shows, just to kind of see what is actually
Though,
going on.
I think the reason we don't catch them on camera
Oh yeah,
is that we think they have not just consciousness dampening fields, but also electromagnetic dampening fields of some kind. And I think that's one of the reasons I think it's maybe the Bigfoot are involved with them, because when people can get Bigfoot photos from distances, but not up close. Why? Why? It's because suddenly the camera doesn't work.
unless
Suddenly
you're using
it doesn't work anymore.
unless you're using an old school Bolex, which doesn't use digital.
Right.
Yeah.
The Patterson Gimlin film, one of the few really good films we have of a Bigfoot encounter, that is a spring action camera that does not require any kind of electronics to run it. The old Bolexes, they were operated. You push a button and it had a spring action instead of like I say, electronics. And that's one of the few really good quality videos we have, or
Yeah.
films we have. And they
I'm so
recently
glad film's
looked
coming
a lot
back.
closer at that.
Yes,
They
it's-
found a
it's
better copy of it,
been confirmed.
and there's no way that you can see the muscles flexing like a monkey suit of that era. They wouldn't have had the
would not have had the
sophistication now
detail,
to
exactly.
be able to do
No.
it. Now we could, of course, but back then certainly we couldn't do
Yeah,
it.
67. Nope.
Oh, and Bigfoot, they confirmed it.
Oh yeah,
That's
is
right.
interesting.
This is
Yeah.
big news. We went to the Contact in the Desert
Last year.
in June, and I went to a Bigfoot lecture, and apparently there's a scientist in America here who has isolated the Bigfoot genome, the DNA of Bigfoot, through called environmental archaeology, where they take water samples and test it for DNA and find out what's peeing in it. You know what I mean? Or what's
cool.
leaving genetic material
Like how
behind
many
in
skunks
it.
in the area or
Yeah.
whatever. Yes.
And there is DNA evidence now that there is an unknown primate in the northern region of America here.
Yeah, northern
Northwest.
California.
Northwest.
Yeah, Oregon and California.
Yeah.
There's an unknown primate species that is living with us. Okay, that
Being in
is-
our creeks.
Yeah. So it's over with, except for the shouting. So
Right.
we know that that Bigfoot is real. It's not something that is like made up, or I mean, there were a lot of fakers that were doing it back in the 50s, whatever, that were doing the fake Bigfoot footprints and that. But those have been been verified as being hoaxes.
Some hoaxes, some
yeah, there were
not,
some hoaxes, of course.
Yeah.
But Bigfoot does exist.
Okay, so I want to wrap it up because I know it's getting late.
All
At
right.
least for some of us. I know for you guys,
Fun.
like
Thank you.
a good time over there. So you guys said you were writing a second book. Do you want to give like a little hint or a little drop bit of information?
We're definitely going to address some of the Bigfoot issues in the second
And
book.
certainly in the second book, and we'll just go further down the rabbit hole. I wanted to also address the Akashic record, because we think that these creatures are responsible for it. We think they're kind of in on this. Some psychic levels, we think they're broadcasting knowledge nonstop.
I know we keep on using those creatures, but they're really not. They're not really creatures.
Yeah,
but
cousins.
They're cousins. They're not completely bad. But it's like like for instance, there was like really quick before we go. There is a interesting book, basically. I think it's called something like 200 200 inventions that happen at the same time.
Simultaneous
inventions,
yes.
like for instance, like as an example, like Tesla and Marconi, they both came up with the idea
the radio,
for radio
at the same time. And...
Now it's like the Akashic Records; they're broadcasting this stuff 24/7, but some people will pick it up, but there's only a certain amount of people that can actually do something with the information.
Right. Maybe 100 people got the information, but only 2 of them happen to have the technical knowledge to be able to
so this
do
is
something
happening all the time.
And so we're about a third of the way through the second book, and it may be a while before it's done. But I would like to also send people, like I say, to our series to read up more about the family experiences at our Instagram page, leslie.shaw.author. And Leslie spelled Leslie. And we also have a website, whotheyarebook.com, where we have excerpts and some blogs and links to any nice podcast people that send us the links for that we do.
Yeah.
And the book again is Who They Are and What They're Up To, and it's available on Amazon and Ingram.
Amazon primarily. Yes.
Yeah. Shameless plug.
No, shameless.
And Belle, did you guys want to share where everyone can find you guys and how to contact you?
Our podcast, The Paranormal Lovers, we are on all major podcasting platforms as well as YouTube, and you can also follow us on Instagram. If anybody wants to support the podcast, you can find us at patreon.com/The Paranormal Lovers, where we have our true crime podcast, The Deadly Lovers, which thank you so much, Chrissy, for your support. Our first Patreon. It's amazing. So I hope you're enjoying it.
I am. Awesome. So obviously I've had a great time. This was really thought-provoking. I'm not going to lie. Like a lot of different theories that I can get behind, a lot of different things I didn't think about. I'm excited to see how you guys take the rabbit hole of Bigfoot and extraterrestrials. That's going to be fun.
Oh, for sure. I'm waiting on that one. I'll have to set an alarm for when that's released.
Right. Other than that, I really appreciate I appreciate everyone coming on. I had such a great conversation with everyone, and I hope you all have a good night. So don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the shadows and secrets. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember the darkness holds the keys to enlightenment. The truth is often stranger than fiction. This is Chrissy signing off.